Hello, everybody. Great to see you, and thank you for joining us. We've got a goodly collection of people here. And as more sign on, just take a moment, if you can, and drop us a note in the chat where you are. I think it's important for us to understand that this is an interactive process. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about some very important things, and we want your comments and questions, so please don't hesitate. And for those who are joining us for the first time, really what I'd like to just tell you for a moment is that Aid Coalition is a US not-for-profit organization, and our mission is strengthening and preserving the democratic foundations of the state of Israel, the state we all love, respect, but in fact, democracy takes work. And so we're about that work, making sure that this is a democracy and remains one. And not just for us, but for our children and our children's children. But for more information on this, please check out the link in the chat now, because it's important you do that. And today, we're marking 779 days since the start of the war in October 7. And with all the excitement about the ceasefire and hostage deal, we want all of you to remember that a large number of families are still waiting for the return of their loved ones for proper burial. This is something we cannot forget, we will not forget, and we will not stop until they are all back home. So that's something that I want you all to take away before we even start into the discussion today with somebody who I deeply, profoundly respect, Michael Hauser Tov. Michael is a correspondent at Haaretz. Michael, thank you for joining us today. He is
Hey, Jeremy.
one of the most respected political journalists. And to be honest, I've read about him before I ever got a chance to meet him. And I read him as often as I can, and I urge you to do that. One of the things that I really, really respect about Michael is his sharp analysis. He's not afraid. He's incredibly clear-eyed. And some people will say he's biased. That's not true. I can tell you frankly, he is in the sense that he's utterly truthful. And when he says something, you can take it to the bank. This is not about some prejudice. He is the quintessential reporter. And I know this because my entire family is based on reporting. And we believe profoundly that reporting and reporting accurately is the mainstay of democracy. Speaking truth, getting it out is critical, and Michael does it. What have we asked him for today? Well, this will be fun. I'm really looking forward to it, and it's a privilege to do this with you, Michael. We're going to ask him to break down some of the latest developments in Israel. The key players, don't hold back on who they are, please. Everybody here needs to know about them. These are individuals, people with characters. Some of you in America don't see them. Often people say Israel Bibi. That is just not the case. Israel is not Bibi. Israel is Israel and full of the most wonderfully interesting people. And each one of you should take from this discussion, who are they? Who are the political people who are really shaping the landscape? And then just a little bit of looking to the future. And I'm going to ask Michael a little bit about that, just to how we should be looking at the future and how can we all think about how we may help. So with that, let me hand over to Michael just to say a few preliminary words, and we're going to start having a few discussion points.
Jeremy, this is very unfortunate that we couldn't stop after your first words because this was that was the highest point in the conversation for me. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I know you for a while, Jeremy. from your years here in Israel, and I know the organization, and I truly believe about the goal and about the targets that you just mentioned. And as you say, this is very, very important values that we all share. I hope that we all share. And during this conversation, I really want to try to follow the truth and to answer about question if there are difficult questions, if there are easier questions, and I will follow the truth as you said and try to do it as sharp as I can, or everyone will think that you are just full of shit and all these things you said about me. It's his fault.
Michael, nobody can ever say that about you. You and
Yeah.
our family are people who have great renown and great respect. Maybe we should just kick it off for a few things and give everybody a sense. And I'd like to get a sense from you this week. What is the most pertinent thing that's going on in Israel this week? And then we're going to deal with the other things, the elections, and we're going to deal with some of the characters and how those elections are going to evolve. But this week, give everybody in the United States that's listening a good picture of the top things, top of mind.
So the top subject is 100% something that just happened this afternoon, and this is the Israeli Air Force attack on the Dahya, the neighborhood in Beirut, and the attack against the number two chief command in Hezbollah organization. This is very important, I think, in many, many different angles. The first and really probably the most important one is the angle about the end of the war. Um, for us in Israel, we are living the war. We are not just talking about the war, we are living the war. And this time, since Trump deal till today, it's been, I think, around 3 months, if I'm not wrong. It's been like an air to breathe. This is very important about recovering as a nation, as a people. And to take all of us back to this world is something very, very serious. So for now, we can see that the northern border is still quiet. It's been, I think, around 5 or even 8 hours since the attack this afternoon. But everything can change, and this is major issue with a lot of influence about many different perspectives. Political perspective as well. The question if we are walking to an election season while an active war, it's a completely different scene than walking to election without any active war. Of course, about strategically the relationship between Israel and Lebanon and what's happening in Lebanon, this is highly important situation, and we still don't know what will happen about it. But if you ask me what is the number one topic about the Israeli life, about Israelis, the thing that just happened this morning in Lebanon, this is very, very important issue that might change the way we live our daily life in Israel. If it will be a clash again between Israel and Hezbollah.
Michael, actually, this is very important because you've just said this could affect daily life. Is your assumption that this could then trigger a tit for tat reaction from Hezbollah? Do they have the capabilities still to do that? How much was eroded?
Yeah, technically, yeah, they do have the capability. Still, they do have the capability to make a serious attacks about Israel. They still have many, many rockets, and they still have the capability to make some things that they want. I don't know if they have enough political power to make such a move like that, and I don't know what your friend from Washington will do. And this is the major question, of course, in the Middle East, because the commander-in-chief is not the Israeli commander-in-chief, is not the Hezbollah commander-in-chief, and is not the Iranian Khomeini. This is President Trump, of course. So President Trump react about this attack will be very important. This is a very big question because this might be weird, but I feel that there is a bit similarity between the situation in Israel and in Lebanon. People in Israel and in Lebanon wants to recover. This is very important. I think that the people in Lebanon wants more than the people in Israel to recover. And Hezbollah make them life very difficult, of course, and the recovery is like impossible because they try to recover the terrorist organization, and the people of Beirut and Lebanon wants to recover their daily life. So I'm not so sure, and I'm not an expert here about the Lebanese, but I'm not so sure that Hezbollah have enough political power to make such a thing like that and to restart the war. But about army capability, about real power, they absolutely 100% have the capability to make a major things to Israel.
So effectively, what you're saying, and let me get this correct, that
Hmm.
their weapon supplies remain intact to a certain degree, and that they have the trained personnel to continue to persecute a war if they so chose to do so. Is that even the case with the absence of a effective Iranian deterrent?
This is a very good question. Look, it's a bit like a weather in Israel. It's very warm, right? And if in some day this is like a 38 Celsius degrees or 41 Celsius degrees, it doesn't really matter because this is hot and this is hot. So the Hezbollah took very strong attacks, and the weapons numbers decrease majority, but they still have the possibility and they still have the rockets and the manpower, mainly the manpower, to make such a thing like that. So it doesn't really matter if they have 100,000 rockets or just 100,000 rockets. This is still a very major issue. About Iran, yeah, you wanted to say something?
No, I'll come back to
Okay.
it. I want to talk to you about the particular target, but let's talk for a minute about what you were going to say about Iran.
About Iran, I think that major sources in the Israeli intelligence forces make an assumptions that during the next future, I want to say, because it doesn't really, um, you can't really say when, but the next few years, probably there will be another round, kind of around. It doesn't have to look like Am Kilavi, like the combat that happened last year, but some military event between Israel and Iran probably will happen at the near future, the next few years. It's a big question how will it looks like and how major will it be, and it's doesn't seem that it's going to happen tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, but at the next future, it will probably, there are pretty much a high percent that something will happen.
Michael, let's just one last point on Lebanon, and then let's move to the bigger picture. With
Yeah.
regard to this specific target, was it really necessary to take him out?
I don't know. I don't really know. Of course, he was a very bad player at this game. Definitely. U.S. government put 5 million bucks a war about his head. He made many of terrorist attack. But at the end of the day, this is a question about strategy and not about tactics. So, does this attack was the right strategical things to do? I don't really know yet. I guess that we will figure it out during the next few days. I guess we will figure it out during the next few months, even. If we will see some major change in Hezbollah's actions and military recovery actions, so we will know that this was something smart and clever to do. But as like many other cases, uh, if you take the head, or in this case, the number two in the organizations, doesn't really mean that the whole organization will change ways and change strategy. So this is a very big question that I don't think that we have the answers yet. And when I say we, I don't, doesn't mean me personally. I think Israel does have no the answer yet.
Michael, let's zoom out a little bit. You said something very interesting, and maybe those on the chat on this list heard this. You said the commander-in-chief sits in Washington,
Yeah,
and walk everybody through how people see President Trump in Israel. And I, for one, just want to state something. While I've never supported him in the past, I have to say that his actions to bring back the living hostages and those who've deceased were nothing short of remarkable and could not have
of
happened
course.
by anybody else. But walk everybody through how people see the president today and how people like myself can praise him, but others have reservations. How do people in Israel see President Trump today?
So I think that there is one moment that we can understood everything from this specific moment. And I'm talking about the time when Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff arrived to the hostage square to Kikar HaTufim, just after the deal was announced. And Witkoff made a speech and he talked about Bibi. And when he talked about Bibi, all the crowd says boo. He booed to Bibi. And then he talked about President Trump. And all the crowd clapped hands hysterically. So I think that this specific moment, and I've been to the square this evening, I've been to Kikar Hatufim this evening, is very, very unique moment that you can understand better things about politics and about Israel and United States relationship from that moment. Israelis have the privilege. We are not living in the United States. So most of us, and I hope that I'm not offending no one, but most of us doesn't really care about US problems. This is not our state. So people don't know a lot about US issues and people don't really bother about US issues. So we have the privilege to support 100% President Trump because he supports 100% Israel and Israeli targets, and specifically he made the impossible deal and made and bring all the hostages back home. So people sees in Israel President Trump as the number one pro-Israel president that United States have ever been. You need to remember that we all live in such a time like we all have very short memory. So we don't really think about a long history. We think about only these days. And people live in Israel with the feeling that President Trump is kind of the president of Israel. I don't know if you have ever been to Kiryat Gat, have you?
Oh,
So
yes.
in Kiryat Gat, there is a US combat military base, actually, that they build just to focus about Gaza. And there are American soldiers who walk in the street of Kiryat Gat, and they are like a real attraction. People take photo with those soldiers who serve in Kiryat Gat. And this base in Kiryat Gat, this is like the most important military base in Israel these days because they operate all the situation in Gaza. So everyone knows in 100% that all the major decision made in Washington, sometimes with Israel, sometimes with a major influence from Israel, and sometimes with a minor influence from Israel. But it always all the decision goes through Washington, and this is something that everyone knows here.
Michael, decisions go through Washington, D.C., and we have the potential, possibly, of elections coming in Israel. Many different things to unpack in that. Now, let's start with a continuation on President Trump and others. The president has said that, in fact, Israelis need to decide. And while he's willing to impose and force the cessation of war in Gaza, to what extent do you think that there will be an influence on the forthcoming elections? And if so, how and what will that look like?
First of all, I don't know how the next election is going to look like. This is going to be the most difficult and different election that Israel have ever seen because we've never been to such an election like this, even not after Yom Kippur, because after Yom Kippur, the leadership was changed, and then only after there was a very speed election. So this is going to be different from anything else, first of all. Secondly, about maybe Trump influence on the Israeli election, I guess, and this is a guess, it's not a fact, of course, but I guess that Trump influence about Israeli election is not going to be such a major influence as people think, because the brand Bibi, the brand Netanyahu, is a brand that already took in considered the support and the hate, the good points and the bad points about this brand. So people who wants to vote Bibi or people who wants to vote against Bibi already know the Trump support, the Trump political support of Netanyahu. They already know that Trump will try to involve in the Israeli election, and Trump will support Bibi and maybe invite him to the White House and maybe put some videos with him or I don't know what. And people already know that all those things are gonna happen, and they made a decision if they want to vote or they want to go to vote for Bibi or against Bibi. So BP it's like a full brand. It is a brand. I'm always calling him a brand because this is really to consider all those influence. So I guess that Trump will try to involve the Israeli election, but I guess also that he could make it only in very, very minority ways, and the influence at the end of the day will not be, going to be such a huge as people think, or even as President Trump think that it's going to look like. But once again, this is not fact. This is all guessed because, as I said at the beginning, this is going to be completely different game that anything else that we have ever seen.
Well, let's unpack that because I think it's important for all of us in America to understand that comment. It's profound. I've been through many elections in Israel, and I certainly recall the terrible environment that went after the 73 war. Let's talk. Perhaps you can start at a 50,000 foot and give people who are listening a real picture of what the political landscape looks like today, and recognizing that some may not recognize names, helpful for everybody to know that, and then factor into that, if you don't mind, the immensely extraordinary events that have happened in the hearts and souls of those who've been demonstrating, and how might that affect the election or not. And then give us a picture, if you don't mind, of the leaders. A lot to unpack there. Let's do it bit by bit.
Sure. So in Israel, it's easier to think that in Israel we have two major parties, the Bibi party and the anti-Bibi party, but it doesn't really the truth because we do have one party, the Bibi party. It's built from Likud, which this is the actually party of Benjamin Netanyahu, of the Prime Minister Netanyahu. But Bibi during these years made a phenomenal political process and put together the Haredis, the ultra-Orthodox, the extreme right, mainly settlers from Judean scenario, but not only, all the extreme right, and the Likud, his home base, which is kind of a big base. It's around the 1 million people in Israel. So this is quite a big base. But he made it as like almost kind of one party, even though this is like the Haredis have two different parties. The extreme right have between two and three parties right now at the Knesset, and the Likud, of course. So this is the sixth party, but they all act kind of a one party, one big party. At the other side, there is the anti-Bibi side, but they have no leader. They have no unity between all those party. So you have the number one candidate by polls who gonna run against Netanyahu, which is Naftali Bennett. Naftali Bennett was a minister of Netanyahu for many, many years. And he, as a former prime minister in Israel as well, he is the one that defeated Netanyahu and took the power 4 years ago. But he's not the leader of the other side because there is no any one leader in the other side. Head of opposition is a guy named Yair Lapid. He's the chairman of Yesh Atid party, and he's very important player as well. But even not all the parties, the opposition parties in the Knesset, in the Israeli parliament, recognize Lapid's leadership. For example, Benny Gantz, which is another player in the opposition, acts as a different part. He sometimes talks with Netanyahu. He already got into his coalition twice. And he might do it again after the election. He doesn't even try to say that he won't. So Gantz is part of the opposition, but does he a real part of the opposition? This is a very big question. And you have another major power, which is Yair Golan. He's like a kind of a new left-wing leader, even though that he was deputy commander-in-chief of IDF in the past. He's like the most lefty candidate right now these days in Israel. He built a new party named the Democrats. It doesn't relate to the Democratic Party in US, of course. But the Democrats Party, and he's very important player. He have around 10 mandates at the poll. 10 mandates. It's almost 10% of the Israeli parliament. So this is a very important movement that built during the last 2 years, and specifically during the last few months. And of course, you have the big question: does the Arab parties are part of the opposition or not? I don't know if you know, but when you watch the Israeli news and you see poll, so you see a poll, you see like three parts. You see the part of the coalition, the part of the opposition, and the part of the Arabs parties. And this is a very big question in Israeli politics. Does the Arabs are part of the opposition or not? They definitely not part of Netanyahu's coalition. They very against Netanyahu, but it's a big question if they are part of the opposition or not. So as you can see, I will speak about the coalition for around 20 seconds and about the opposition almost 20 minutes. And this is in purpose because the situation in the coalition is very clear. You have Bibi, you have the ultra-Orthodox, you have the extreme right. In the opposition, this is a big mess. And this is the number one challenge for the opposition at the next election.
Let's come back to that mess for a minute and just ground everybody and correct me
Sure.
if I'm wrong. But in the
Sure.
22 election, there was something like 6.9 million people who were eligible to vote. And yet only 4.7 actually voted, 4.7 million. Now that meant that many of the young people didn't bother to vote. And we in America have a different kind of democracy. In Israel, you need about 3.25% of the total electorate to allow your party to come in. And that's roughly 150,000 votes if we base that on the last election. So that means that for each seat in the Knesset, you need roughly 40,000 votes. Am I correct in those figures? That's
Yeah.
So when you look at 120 seats and multiple parties, you're looking at essentially a proportional representation, nearly, not quite, but a portion. And with fragmentation, that then allows you to have the kinds of coalitions that Likud has put together under Bibi to drive what might not actually be the majority of votes, but they have the majority of seats. So looking today, have the protests thrown up new leaders, not the old guys? Are there new people that are on the block who can really take out a coalition that Bibi might put together, because presumably he's not going to just give up? And in that context, who are these people? And realistically, what should we be thinking about their possibility of winning in the next election?
Wow. So those are many different questions in one question. First of all, I just want to say a quick note about the numbers that you mentioned at the beginning. Israel is one of the countries with the highest numbers of people who go and vote, even though that this is not a mandatory. Like I think in Australia you get a fine if you don't go and vote. So in Israel you have nothing like that, and still people go and vote in very high numbers. Because you need to understand that in this 6 point something million people that allowed to vote, you still count many Israeli who lives abroad, and we don't have any vote by mail or abroad voting system or something like that. And you count a lot of people who got an Israeli citizenship, for example, from Ukraine, who doesn't really take a major part in Israeli life or in Israeli politics, and a lot of people who lives even in your community who left Israel many years ago and don't really take an active part about the Israeli politics game. So at the end of the day, a lot of people do vote in the left side, in our part of the political arena. The numbers are even higher. The numbers of the anti-Bibi voters are almost the maximum number. Almost. Of course, this is not the maximum, but around for I would say that around 90% of the people who are allowed to vote against Bibi go and vote against Bibi. The numbers about the opposite side, about Bibi's parties, are a bit lower than the anti-Bibi, because there are many people who come. I know maybe even you know a few of them that are planning to fly back to Israel specifically to the election day and go and vote. So this is something very important, and I think this is a major note that we all need to remember. This is a very respectful thing, in my opinion, and I have a lot of respect to those people who buy tickets to Israel all the way from America, London, Australia, or I don't know where specifically to go and vote. About your main questions, about new player that might jump to politics. Um, there are a lot of names, of course, but I think that the number one thing that we all need to be very aware is about we call it satellite parties. If there is some party that run as individual party, but behind the scenes they are part of one of the major party who have a representing in the Knesset these days. So, for example, we can say that one party or another party, this is like a satellite party of the Likud or of Yesh Atid or I don't know what. And this is very important, and I tell you why. Because there are many people in Israel who says, okay, we've been go through this terrible pro and anti-Bibi discussions all along those 10 years, this decade, and we just can't take it anymore. And we want something else. We are in the middle. We are not hating Bibi and we are not endorsing. We are something in the middle. And this have many people who listen to those voices and love what they hear. And they think, okay, I'm not going to vote, for example, Yair Lapid. I'm going to vote this party. Or at the opposite side, they can say, okay, I'm not going to vote Bibi, or I don't know, maybe I'm not going to vote Bezalel Smotrich, one of the extreme right people in the Bibi's side. I'm going to vote for this third party. And this is a huge question because the blocks in Israel are very stable. The pro and anti-Bibi numbers are continually to be pretty much the same numbers all during these years. And this like third issue, third part, way of thinking, this is something that can swipe people from one side to another side. And then what will happen the day after the election? Does those parties, and I can put my money that there will be a party like that. There is an organization in Israel called Harivon HaRevi'i, the fourth quarter, which should represent like 25% of the population in Israel who believe in this third way, not pro and not against Bibi, third way. So, and they do want to run to the Knesset. They didn't announce it yet, but everyone thinks that they will run. So, what will happen with this party or with other party like this party about the fourth quarter? Will they go with Bibi or will they go against Bibi? So this is a huge question because this party or other party like that can change the whole election. So the main question is not does Yossi Cohen, the former head of the Mossad, will join the Likud or not, because doesn't really change anything. The question is what will be about those middle parties, about those alternative parties, and that can change everything. I want to just like think about a block between the Democrats and the Republican, and then one independent party who got, I don't know, like 10 or 20 seats in the Congress. This can change everything, right? This is like incredible. This is, I think it's never happened in the US, but think about this possibility. So this is kind of the situation in Israel. This is like never happened, not all the almost 300 years, but this has never happened around the last decade, the last 10 or 15 years under Bibi administration. And this is the only way that can Bibi can take voters against him and build with them a coalition. So this, in my opinion, the most interesting question about new players in the politics, and not as you can imagine about all those names who might be familiar to a few of you and for all the people in Israel. I can name several, like Yoaz Endel, I don't know, a former minister, or Yossi Cohen, as I mentioned, the former head of the Mossad. But those are really the small questions. The big question is what will be the middle, and that I don't really know, and I don't know what they will do after the election. And I feel very afraid about the anti-Bibi campaign, because I think that this can change everything and can give Bibi another 4 more years.
Michael, very important comments. What, in your mind, has led to the creation of this third way?
Frustration. People get sick about this discussion. I know this very personally. I can look about my grannies. I can look about my mom. Um, my grannies are 86, and they feel that this country go to hell. That they feel that everything wrong, and of course they do believe that Bibi is the problem, and they're not going to vote for this third way parties. But the frustration is such a major feeling in Israel that some of the people feel that the only way is to break the blocks, is to break the sides, is to find another way. And this is feelings, this is the number one tool for politicians. They can use those hard feelings to make incredible political steps. And I'm afraid that those people being used, and those feelings being used by those people who talk about the third way, and at the end of the day will go and join Bibi.
Let's ask one last question on that and then shift a little bit. In all
Sure.
of these groupings, I think it would be true to say there are some certain fundamental facts that need to be dealt with regard to the future of Israel. The role of the Haredim, the integration of the Arab population, and the profound fragmentation being caused by the extremists, Ben Gvir and Smotrich and that group. In addition to which, you've seen a wash of anti-Semitism sweep across the world. Now, that in part comes from the fact that people aren't able to point in Israel to something of great excellence and great value, and we've lost many of the supporters around the world. So, I'm talking about countries which naturally would have followed Israel now look at it very differently. And then lastly, even the United States shifting its attention to Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. So, with these big picture issues going on here, who do you see in this environment of the next election being capable of dealing or thinking strategically about Israel in the context of those changes?
I would say something a bit hard, but no one. I guess that the guy who will take the power after Bibi will make not such a good work. He would never be able to. Because that Netanyahu issue is such a major issue that the guy who will walk into the office after him will need to struggle about all those like aftershocks, after Bibi shocks. So I guess that the Israeli political arena will have to take this 4 year gap only to stable. And only after this 4 year of stabilization, we will be able to talk about increasing, about something new, about something else, about solving the big picture issues that you just talked about it. But I truly believe that right now, these days, there is no any one politician or candidate or any future politician that can shift the huge ship called State of Israel and change the direction. I just feel that this is impossible, and I guess that you will be able to get it better about the question that who will walk into the Oval Office after Trump, and how long does it take for will it take for him to fix all Trump's issues, for example, and to fix all the instability of US during Trump time, Trump days. Or MAGA days. It's not only about Trump. It's about all the political situation in the United States. So it will take some time. This is my answer. It will take some time.
So, as I take from you, there's nobody immediately obvious. There's a third grouping of people who are looking for a way of introducing themselves to the Knesset. I've got two other questions, and I would like the audience, please, to start firing some questions as well, because Michael's here. It's a unique resource, and let's use that. Michael, women in Israel have traditionally been one of the more remarkably free constituencies in the world, actually. They've represented people who fought in the army, navy, Mossad, Shin Bet, across the board and put their lives on the line. And yet, Knesset has got a paucity of women, real paucity of women. What do you see the role of women being in the next election? Do they have a role? Can they project themselves into a better position into the Knesset, having put their lives on the line, and now having raised many of the families during these terrible periods of time, and having gone through the brutalization that happened in October 7, where do women stand in this panoply of change that you see coming up?
Knesset represents Israeli society, and Israeli society have 40% of population who doesn't recognize women's power or women's rights to be in power. I'm talking about ultra-Orthodox and about Arabs. Both of the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredis, and both of the Arabs have no any women representatives at the Knesset. So our starting point is a very bad starting point about this issue, because women have the power when, I don't know, in Israel, progress became a very bad word, in the United States, I guess, as well. But women have the power. Where do you find progress? So you find progress in the Mossad and the Shin Bet, in Tzahal, in IDF. You find women in Air Force and in the Navy and everywhere you can find progress. But in the Knesset, don't see progress, you see reality. And this is a very difficult reality because, once again, we started from only 60% of the population who just let women get into the circle of decision makers. And once again, when you deep into it, you can see that there is a small amount of women in the government as well. Why? Because that Haredis have a huge influence about the government, and even about parties that they do allow women to join the party and to take a major offices. Let's talk, for example, the ultra right Smotrich, Bezalel Smotrich. I talked about him with Tzionut Datit party, Bezalel Smotrich party. They don't give a fair representation for women. They have only one or two women's, but they still, you can see the influence about women's position. And when you take, for example, Bezalel Smotrich is not an ultra-Orthodox, but he is an Orthodox. So just take a look about Orthodox synagogue, for example, and try to see where are the women and where are the male. So this is kind of similarity for the politics. So women does exist in the Tzionut Datit, and they do have a part, and even important part, but it's not equal at the end of the day. So this is a very big problem.
Well, very important for everybody in America to hear because there are groups within Israel who are specifically trying to raise the profile of women in the electoral process. You mentioned something very dear to my heart, and early on, and just so everybody knows, I'm very much involved in that. That's fly and vote. There are large numbers of Israelis abroad who are really in some ways disconnected. On the other hand, they have the right to vote. And Israel is one of the few countries in the world where you cannot vote when you're a citizen and you're abroad. So, do you think that this kind of an effort can make a difference, will make a difference? And if so, how do people see it already in Israel, if they see it at all?
I can't see any situation when the law in Israel will change and let people who live abroad to vote for many reasons. But number one reason is the fact that we had a right-wing government during the last 30 years, and people believe that the Israeli who lives abroad are more left side. So there is not enough political capital to make this important change and to let people vote abroad, to let Israeli people vote abroad as well. So I just can't see any political situation when they will change the law and let people do so. Only, even not. Even not after Bibi, because at the end of the day, this is not going to be a left side coalition. Okay, this is not. This is going to be like a right and left a combination or something like that. And Naftali Bennett and all those people are kind of part of the right wing as well. So I hardly can see. This is something that people try to do for many years and failed. So I don't see it's going to change in the near future. But once again, I want to say I absolutely endorse those people who take everything and fly all the way to Israel. And I know my partner lives in London for the last year, so I met a lot of Israeli who lives in London, and they always ask me, "Do you have any knowledge about when the election will happen? Because we want to buy a flight ticket." And more than that, people are afraid that Miri Regev, the Minister of Transportation, gonna sabotage the flights to Israel and the Israeli airport, Ben Gurion Airport, during election season, during election day or the day before the election, to avoid those Israel to fly. So they want to buy a ticket for a week before, something like that. So those people are amazing, and they have many rights in Israel. And I wish that sometimes in the future we will change the law and let people vote abroad as well.
Well, that's a good point. And just a reference for those on the line today, Aid Coalition is actually doing Flight and Vote. And if you want to find more about that, we can put that into the chat as well. With regard to a couple other things that we've got
And I
two.
just want to say that I don't believe that we were gonna sabotage the airport, so you can take it easily.
Well, we will see as we see, but at the moment we have a number of different questions now coming in. And given that you are the new generation of Israel, the generation that has grown up in a world which is very different economically, very different socially, how do you see the changes that are occurring with your generation now compared to your, as you mentioned, your grandparents? You still seem to have a great deal of optimism. You seem to be really driven by this. Do you think that you're representative, or in fact that very sad view that your grandparents were talking about is the one that will predominate? Will the Haredim dominate? Will there be a change in the secular world? And by the way, I'm synthesizing questions that are coming in right now from a number of people worried about secularism, worried about Haredim, worried about service of the Haredim. But it's more the general question is your generation. What do you see that gives you hope?
Um, I tell you, first of all, I will tell you what I sense the biggest difference between my generation and my father's generation, or my mom's generation, and my granny's as well. Um, we watching television and vote for the best person at the singing song competition. And we watch surviving and vote for the person that we liked the most. And like realities, we watch about politics and vote for people. And I think that this is the biggest differences between my generation and other generation. We vote for persons and not for ideas. This being a fact, 100% fact for me, for all the last years, only and change only at the recent 3 years when the judicial crop started and Yair Levin wanted to change the Israeli constitution. Before that, we voted only for personas and not for ideas at all. These days a big change, but I don't really know if this is something unique for the current situation or it will be a longer influence issue. But I guess that at the near future, we will be back to vote for persons. Specifically after the war and after all the judicial issues will be done, I hope, in the next future. So we are much more cynical and we are much more pro people and not pro ideas. And this is a huge change from other generation and a huge change for politicians. And from that point, this is the perspective and this is the angle that I will take for your question about how the political arena will looks like. So it will be much more about persons. We'll vote for and against persons. And after Bibi, there will be new Bibi. It might be from the right or might be from the left, but there will be a new Bibi because we will vote again for people and not for ideas. I'm not saying it as a good issue. I'm saying it as just a phenomenon, just a reality. I didn't born for a time that we had to war to take part in a war for Israeli surviving. Even that war was not for the Israeli surviving. We're not have this survival sense as our parents or specifically our grannies, who few of them came from Holocaust and for the camps in Europe have. So this is a total different issue for the new generation and open the debate for a new perspective, and it will based about people's in my perspective.
Very interesting. Michael, we've got 5 minutes, and I'd like to touch on something which is perhaps really difficult for somebody who lives in Israel and even, but London less so, to understand about America, and love your comments on it. I've just returned from Australia, Europe, multiple places, Asia. and Israel, obviously. But the one thing that strikes me is the immense change in the attitudes and concerns and fears of the Jewish community around the world. There is a profound sense of worry, sheer worry that anti-Semitism is rising enormously. To what extent do people in Israel understand that, identify it, and see what they might do to give courage to those abroad? And
In
what are
Israel, it's all. I tell you what, in Israel, we mainly talk about Aliyah. We mainly talk about when things are getting worse in Paris or in London or in I don't know, in New York. So people should take everything and do Aliyah and move to Israel. And this is very foolish and very weird perspective, in my opinion, because we are the number one nation who lives about those connections, and we're related on those communities around the world. But our only solution for their problems is Aliyah, which is important, of course, but a lot of people wants to live in Sydney or in Paris or in Lisbon. And we need to recognize this and we need to respect those choice. These days, Israel have no any good answers for those concerns of those peoples, except from Aliyah. And I really hope that the current crisis about Israeli diaspora relationship will maybe pop up the new solutions, because I think that these problems gonna make some gonna be worse during the next few days, during the next few years, sorry. And because the situation is not so easy at all right now, and will be even worse probably at the next few years. I really hope that Israelis will find new answers for this question, which is not Aliyah. But these days, I am afraid that this is the only answer that Israelis have.
Michael, you're very generous with your time. Thank you for that. Your views, we've touched on a huge array of things today, but perhaps I'll offer you one last thought in response to what you said. If the elections come, and when they come, then the true concept behind them has to be delivering values that can make Israel be seen in the eyes of the world as something remarkable, as it always was. Startup nation was more economic concept. What I'm really talking about is values nation, a nation that is profoundly based on moral values, profound understanding of the role of economy, so that we as a nation can set a standard for the rest of the world. And I think what you're telling me is that maybe in that middle ground, that third party, you might find that. But I think it's essential we get it. Any last comments you'd like to give to the audience at this stage? Remembering we're out here, we are fascinated by what you have to say, but would love to have you say the last word.
Sure. Um, I think Israel have many challenge for the next few years. The number one challenge is some topic that we didn't even discuss about it, and this is crime, I would say, crime, criminalism. Because of the fact that all the populist wave that rushed all over the world, all over countries, came to Israel specifically when Prime Minister Netanyahu had his own private trial, made a unique situation in Israel when criminals raised their heads and became a major part of the society. And the biggest challenge of Israel is to take all those criminals. They are not murderers, or they're not serious criminals, but they're just bad people who took control about Israel's system. And we will have to take them and take them back to those holes that they came from, and fight against all this bad influence that populism and criminal issues made Israel what it is. And I guess that if we will succeed, and if we will change the way that Israel go through, And of course, this is not going to be a 100% victory, and we will still have populism, and we will still have many issues. But if we will take all these people who should not be important people and became important in Israel 2025, we will be able to make Israel great again, but not as a joke. Seriously, we will be able to take these important words that you talked about, these values, and take the values and put them in the front of Israel. And I'm truly believe that this is the major issue. This is the major issue. And after this, everything will be better and everything will be fixed. But this is a truly difficult fight, and I really hope that we will win this fight.
Thank you, Michael. With you in the front lines, I'm sure we are. And so I'd like to thank you for the time, for those who've listened to us today. If anybody wants to help further what we're doing at Aid Coalition, remember, we always welcome your help. And Michael, really a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your moderation and wonderful questions.
Bye now, everybody.